let's talk about the Turbosound iP3000 again. I've already got one video on YouTube about these things, and it's my preliminary thoughts video. I had just gotten them in. I did 3 events with them the first week, and I thought I'd throw my thoughts out there about it. I've had these for probably a month now, and I have done a very wide variety of events. I've done sound for a full band. I've done sound for a fundraiser, which was basically a speaking engagement with an acoustic show. I've done a couple of wedding dances. I've done a school dance, and I had one small wedding dance, about 125 people, one large wedding dance, about 400 people, and then I've done a school dance with roughly 300 in attendance, and I've also DJ'd a outdoor color run, and I have DJ'd a cross-country meet. First time I've ever DJ'd a cross-country meet. Basically I was there for PA for announcements, and then I was also playing music to get the runners energized and ready to go. So this video is going to be, I'm going to try to get to the point with this one. Sometimes I babble on for a long time, but I'm going to try to get to the point with this. Pros, cons, my final thoughts. So my pros are, it's a heavy duty speaker. The build quality seems very solid. The sub is solid. The column is metal. It doesn't feel cheap and flimsy. It just generally feels solid throughout the whole thing. There's little pins, little connecting pins, 4 of them that come down. They slide into each other. Those feel solid. I don't feel like I have to. Obviously I protect them, I don't want to bend them, I'm not going to smash a case down on top of them and bend the pins, but they don't feel fragile, like you really have to look out for them. It just, in general, feels like a very good, solid speaker. The cases that you can buy, it doesn't come with cases, you have to buy the cases, but the cases are really nice. I haven't had them a really long time to see how they hold up, but I don't feel, they feel thick and well constructed. I don't think I'm going to run into zipper problems. I don't think I'm going to run into where the edges are getting tore out and I'm getting holes in them. I think the cases are going to last as long as I have the speakers. It sounds great. And in my last video I touched on the fact that it has a 5-way crossover. So the sub is one crossover point, the compression drivers are another crossover point. And then all those 3.5-inch speakers are crossed over in 3 different areas. And I think that enables the speaker to have a better full range of sound. A lot of the competing column arrays, which I haven't listened to all of them, so I can't speak to how well the other ones sound, but a lot of the other column arrays are 2-way, where you've got a sub and you've got the 3-inch, 3.5-inch, 2 3/4-inch drivers, whatever they've got, but those little drivers are trying to do everything. And a lot of times these boxes are crossed over at about 180 hertz, so maybe 200 hertz, so that all those little speakers are trying to do everything from 200 and above. And I think that's the benefit of the 5-way crossover, is I think you just get a better full range of sound coming out of this thing, because it does sound really good. It looks good. This is probably one of the best looking column arrays out there. It looks beefier. It doesn't look cheap and small. It's got dual 12s in the sub, so that's good and wide. The solid column going up, no visible wires. I can say without a doubt this looks so good. It's gotten me more bookings. And I say that because at the color run, somebody saw these speakers, they came up and talked to me about them, and that's how I booked the cross-country meet. And that was my first time out with these speakers, so I'm glad I took them out. I was iffy because if anybody's done a color run, there's powdered color everywhere in the air, and I was pretty iffy about bringing them out because I didn't want to first gig out have them covered in pink powder paint. But they made it through the gig just fine, and I booked another gig out of it. You know, if I brought our DAS Audio Action 12As on sticks, would I have gotten the cross-country meet? I don't know. You know, it just looks like a standard setup. Where these, they look good. They look special. They look different, and people are always amazed at the sound and the sound quality that comes out of them because they are just skinny little columns. And, you know, this is all at a great price point. $14.99 MAP. If you shop around, you might be able to find them cheaper out there, but MAP is $14.99, excluding the covers. You know, you're probably going to spend another $100 on the covers. But you know, for the price and what you get, it's unbeatable. And I always say that with Turbosound. The price to performance ratio is amazing. Like with Turbosound, you might not always get, well, I'm not going to say you're ever going to get, you don't get the top shelf premium speaker. You get a solid middle of the road speaker. But you get it at such a good price point that it totally worth it. Price to performance ratio is perfect with Turbosound. Now, my cons. And this list is a little longer, but I want wait till you hear my final thoughts on it. Don't listen to my rambling of the cons. You know, some of these might be a little nitpicky, but some of them are important. I'm going to start out with the covers. You know, they make a dolly plate for these, which, because they're so heavy, it'd be awesome to have the dolly plate. But the dolly plate's like another $100, so I don't know if that's really worth it. And then the other thing is if you use the dolly plate, they only make this one cover that slips over the top. Well, if you put the dolly plate on the back and tip it up onto its back, well, you can't slide the cover on because the dolly plate's in the way. So since they have the dolly plate, they really should have, you know, an option B cover for if you're using the dolly plate. They do that with the IQ series subwoofers. They make two different cases for it. One if you have the casters, one if you don't. They should do the same for this. They have not yet. Maybe they will in the future. But, you know, the reason they make a dolly plate, these things are heavy. If you're an older DJ, anyone with back problems, anyone with under 40-pound lifting requirements, these are not for you. I mean, lifting this sub, I don't know the exact weight of the sub off the top of my head, but I'm going to say like 80 pounds. Like it's heavy. And it is hard to lift because it's 12-inch sub, so it's really low to the ground. The handles are really low to the ground, and the 12s are side by side, so your grip is really wide. So you're practically picking something up, you know, really low right off the ground, and I can do it. And if I load these up in a vehicle, I don't throw them on a cart and wheel them out. I just grab it. Usually what I'll do is I'll pick it up, I'll rotate it so that the top of the speaker is actually at my chest so I can hold it closer to me, because, you know, these are 24 inches deep and 24 inches wide, I believe. You know, so if you're holding them flat out like this, you know, with the top straight up, I mean, it's out far, and you're putting a lot of, you know, forward pressure on your lower back. But if you grab it and flip it and pull it in and hug it close to your body like this, it's not quite as bad. But I have found it's a little wide when you do that to you know, make it through doors. So sometimes I'll like go sidestep through a door like this, especially the doors of my office. I don't know, actually this gate's open. I don't know how wide my doors are, probably 32 inches or so. I'm not sure what commercial doors are. But when I do that and I go sidestepping through the door, I have to be careful because I'm maybe only an inch skinnier than the door, and you know, so that gets to be a little bit of an issue. They're big, they're heavy, they're cumbersome. Now, in my last video, I was using them with a Rock and Roller R2 cart. And I had complained if you use an R2 cart and you want to put both of them on, you have to flip them onto their backs so the front speaker grill is up. And the issue with stacking the tops on top of that is the speaker grill has a curve to it. So if you're going over bumpy terrain, what happens is, they vibrate and then they want to start sliding off because it's not a flat surface. So I did order a Rock and Roller R12 cart, and it is the perfect size. It's got bigger wheels, which is nice because this does become quite a bit of weight on them. So if you're going, over even just a couple inch bump, having the bigger wheels makes a huge difference being able to do that. But the R12 is big enough to where you can put two of them down flat. I can stack a bunch of equipment. I mean, the high school dance that I did, I put the two subs down. I stacked my controller, a couple Chauvet gig bars, the top speakers. Oh, I don't even remember what all I had on there, but on my table, I had that on there. I mean, I had the thing stacked like this high, and it was almost just 2 trips in. So one trip took like 90% of the stuff on the cart, and then if you've watched my one video, I use a Stanley FatMax toolbox for all my cords, microphones. Check out that video. It's a great video about an awesome way to pack your stuff instead of using a tote, just a regular tote that you just throw everything in. The Stanley FatMax toolbox is a great organizing option. Go to my channel, check out that video for sure. But so I used the Rock and Roller cart for 90% of the stuff. I had my backpack on my back for the second trip and wheeled the Stanley FatMax toolbox in. And I got everything in 2 trips. So I was pretty impressed with that. So the R12 cart is, if you're going to get 2 of these, spend the, I think they're like $269 MAP. Spend the extra $269, get a Rock and Roller R12. Well worth the money if you've got these, especially for how heavy they are. The next con, one of the things that I like about column arrays, the thing that I like the idea of the column array, is that you are getting essentially line array technology with it. And we own a line array. We own 12 boxes of the DAS Audio Event 210A. And so we use a line array, and so I've heard, the line array potential versus our point source speakers. And I can safely say you do not get any line array benefits with this speaker. None whatsoever. This speaker acts as a point source. Now, I have not taken my dB meter out and done technical analysis on it, but just knowing the difference, like, I've done an outdoor event with our line array, and you stand in front of that thing, it's loud. You go back 100 feet, it's still loud, clear, it projects nicely. That's a line array. This, it feels like it just radiates sound in every direction, and this is one of my biggest cons of this one. It feels like it radiates sound in every direction, and it feels like it trails off. And for those of you not familiar with the line array versus point source, a point source speaker, on average, trails off in volume at 6 dB for every doubling of distance. And so if it's rated at, say, 131 dB, or let's just say 130 dB at 1 meter, well, at 2 meters, you're at what, 124. And then, you go to 4 meters and, take off another 6 dB, 8 meters, take off another 6 dB. Like, your sound trails off pretty fast with a point source. So the benefit of a line array is it trails off at 3 dB instead. So what's interesting is you can have a line array that puts out less volume, but at 100 feet it can still be louder than a point source because it trails off half what the other one does. But I feel like, I haven't taken the time to measure it, I don't think I will, but you can just tell from doing the outdoor cross-country meet, like just being outdoors and walking 100 feet away from this thing, like it dies off. It does. You definitely don't get the line array like, oh, it's still loud at 100 feet. I mean, it might still be loud at 100 feet I mean, I don't know. I take that back. It's not going to be loud at 100 feet. It's going to be as loud as a 12-inch box would be at 100 feet. You don't get the projection that you do with a real line array. And I'm going to attribute that to the 5-way crossover, is why this does not act at all like a real line array. You know, you've got subs, 1, tops, 2, 3 in the 3 different crossover points in the middle, all doing different frequencies. And the thing with the line array is you need a line of speakers that's all doing the same thing, because then they begin to work together as one giant speaker. And with this, you've got a big line of speakers, but they're doing 5 different things all the way up and down the speaker. So you're really chopping down your line array potential. And when you think, well, okay, I've got, well, let's just say, I don't know how many speakers, but let's say we got 8 speakers in a line like this. Well, that line is about as long as a 12-inch speaker. Like, you're not getting any real benefit. I mean, I would almost think you'd have more line array benefit with a point source dual 15 box, because at least you've got 2 15s that are creating a line about this long. Well, I guess I'm off screen. But I don't think you get that benefit with it. And that's a solid con for me, because I really wanted to get a column array that was going to have better projection than a point source, and you don't have it with this one. The other thing, it's loud behind the speaker. Like, when I had said the sound just seems like it radiates in every direction. If you're standing 10 feet behind the speaker and then you go stand 10 feet in front of the speaker, I think it's just as loud, front to back. The only difference is in front, you're getting the crispness of the compression drivers. Otherwise, I think all of those 3.5-inch speakers, I think the sound just radiates everywhere. And in my other videos, I've talked about how I prefer wood cabinet speakers. Like, I just feel like they project the audio out better. And, I don't know if, and I've said this before, I don't know if wood cabinet speakers, if it's the wood that has that projection factor, or if just in a wood cabinet they're more expensive speakers, so they use better or more dampening material inside of the speaker. I don't know. But I've owned plastic speakers, I've owned wood speakers, and if you compare them side by side, the plastic speaker is always louder behind the speaker than the wood cabinet speaker is. And these have, the column is metal, and I'm going to say you run into the same issue. It just seems like it just radiates sound backwards through the speaker. And I haven't cracked them open to see what kind of dampening material is in there, if they use much dampening material, but that's a huge issue for me, because when I did that school dance, I was pushing these things to the max, and I left with my ears ringing, and I was behind the speakers the whole night, and my ears were ringing. And the other issue with that is feedback, because you're getting washed with so much of the sound behind the speakers, that sound's going right into your microphone too. So the other issue I had was, pushing these things to the max at a school dance and having so much volume behind the speakers, I was running into feedback issues with my microphone. Not bass feedback, not screeching high-pitched feedback, but right in the middle, mid-range bass, or mid-range frequency, mid to high mid frequencies, which is what the 3.5-inch speakers are doing. So their sound is definitely radiating everywhere. And the average DJ setup that goes out, if I bring these out for live sound, I've got an X32. I can notch stuff out. If I'm going out with a DJ controller, I'm not bringing an X32 to run my own sound through so I can fine tune the audio. I use the 3-band EQ on the speakers, and primarily I leave my controller flat. These do not have auto feedback. I kind of wish they would do a firmware update like they have with the IQ series and be able to notch out a few feedback frequencies. I feel like that would help quite a bit. I think I would give that a little bit better rating if they put that in there. If I was able to just do a quick little notch out, you know, set it to find frequency, turn my mic on, slowly turn it up until it feeds back, have it notch out, and save that, that'd be perfect because I use the same microphone every time. Granted, some rooms might have different feedback frequencies, but I think I'd be 90% of the way to go, you know, with being able to store a user preset like that. So feedback is definitely an issue, and I think it is attributed to the volume being so loud behind the speaker. And you know, when I was doing that that fundraiser with the acoustic show and the speech, they were talking through lapel mics, and you know, I had to rent the lapel mics because I needed 4 of them and I only have one. And I don't know what kind of microphone they gave me, if it was cardioid or omnidirectional. I'm guessing it was an omnidirectional lapel mic, because I mean I was getting feedback like crazy. And I had an X32 there, so I did ring out the lapel mics to start out the gig. And I had them what sounded pretty loud. But then when the room filled up, you know, and the fact that these don't project very well, people in the back of the room could not hear people. Couldn't hear the people talk. People in the front could, but the people in the back couldn't. So I had to really start pushing up the volume on them, and I was pushing them into feedback. And you know, some of it was like one of the kids with the lapel mic. You know how they talk. They're like, "Oh, this is what I think about this and that." You know, they talk. They don't speak out when they talk. They talk very quiet. So I had to push his mic, the gain really high on it. And it was interesting because his mic wasn't feeding back when he talked, but when his dad talked, the dad, I had his EQ'd out pretty good too at this point in time, but the dad's mic, there's the sound from his mic from the speakers coming back through the kid's mic caused the kid's mic to feed back. And I was just fighting feedback the whole time. And it wasn't always the person talking, it would be the person not talking. And it just bleed from the speakers back through, I think was really the primary issue. If I had my Vantech speakers there like I had last year, it wouldn't have looked as nice and clean. You know, I really liked having the 2 columns there. It looked nice. Everybody thought it sounded amazing, but I was getting feedback issues. So huge con for me, huge red flag. Also, I do want to touch on the 5-way crossover, having the different frequency banks. If you're standing right in front of this thing, you're only getting that one, you know, the compression drivers are probably shooting over your head, and then the high mid bank is what's shooting you in the face. So if you're standing right in front of the speaker, it sounds very mid heavy. You've really got to stand about 10 feet away from these things before they sound good. And I think the 10-foot mark is like the magic point where all of these different, you know, these 5 different crossover banks all come together and hit your ears at the same time. I think that's the sweet spot, is about 10 feet away. Any closer than that and you're starting to miss out on frequencies, whether it's the low mids way down here, just not projecting up to your ears at the right time, but it feels like 10 feet away it sounds great. Any closer than that and you get a colored sound, like you're getting too many mids. The height of the speaker. I don't remember the exact height of this speaker. I think it's like 7 feet, maybe a little taller. It's got good height, but at the school dance that I did, you know, we're talking 300 kids, and they were all just super tightly packed in front of me. I mean, they were practically on top of me the whole night, bumping into my table. The school didn't have a stage. I was in a standard gym, ground level with everybody, but everybody was just super tightly packed right in front. and 80% of the speaker is being blocked by a sea of bodies. So about 10 times during the night, I walked out in front of out into the back of the gym and seeing how loud it was, and it was not loud back there. So just throughout the night, I was just inching up the volume, louder and louder and louder, and that's why I got it so loud. My ears were ringing at the end of the night. I was definitely pushing these things as loud as they would possibly go, and it was still quiet at the back of the room. Not even the back of the room. I just walked behind the cluster of kids, and it was loud back there, and that area quiet back there. And it's really because, if you're talking about bodies standing, a sea of bodies, and what is above their head, you've got 2 compression drivers and maybe 3 of the 3.5-inch speakers that's actually shooting out over the crowd. So you're not even getting full sound getting projected out. There's just not enough of the speaker up above everybody's head to really let that sound come out. So, I didn't walk into the center of the crowd to see what it sounded like in there, but I can tell you everybody wanted to be right up front, and I feel like that's where all the good sound was, and the bodies were just blocking everything. I was DJing at one point in time, and I looked over and I saw a kid standing just straight up, like right in front of the speaker, and it literally was just like, 8 inches of the speaker coming up over his head, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, that kid is blocking literally all of the sound coming out of that speaker. So, I love the look of this style of column array, where there is no pole, there is no speak-on cord coming down. It's, the bass and everything just clicks right in together. Like the Evolve 50 is the same way. But at a bigger event like that, where everybody's so clustered together, there's just not enough of the speaker up high enough to get the sound out over everyone. And I know with the Evolve 50, they did make a shorter pole for, if you're on a stage and you want to have a shorter pole, but what they really need to come up with is a pole with maybe another 1.5 feet of height. And maybe that just gets too high and it would get too wobbly, but it's a definite downside to these speakers. And it really makes me look harder at the RCF Evox or the FBT CS1000. The FBT CS1000 is a speaker I would love to try. And the reason I say that is because, well, these are heavy. Sometimes I don't need to bring a dual 12 and a column, and I don't really want to own the IP1 or IP2000 and the IP3000. But the FBT CS1000, you buy one of those and you get a 12-inch sub and a column, and the column is wood. That's the main reason I'd love to try that out. I want to know the difference between the FBT's wooden column versus the metal one here, or the plastic one in the IP500. Just handmade wood construction. And a pole, so I can adjust how high do I want it. And now say I do an event like that school dance for 300 kids. If I have 4 of the FBT CS1000s, you can array them. Take one 12, stack the other 12 on it, pole, stack the 2 columns together. I think you flip over the top column to make the array happen, and you've got that adjustable pole. And I feel like if I'm double stacking the 12s on top of each other, plus I've got that pole, I feel like I could get the height that I want. Now the downside, the CS1000, I think they're like $18.99 for one, and you've got to buy 4 of them to get the output that this thing has. So that's where I always say that the Turbosound has the best price to performance ratio, because you're talking 2 of these, $3,000. CS1000, you need 4 of them to do the same thing. And now, you're talking about $7,500 to buy 4 of them versus $3,000. It's more than twice the price. Nobody around here has a CS1000. I would love to hear it, love to compare it, And I would maybe buy 4 of them for myself. If they sound amazing, if the rear rejection is way better, I like that the top fits inside the sub for storage. I like that there's scalability built into it. You know, you can only scale up to what this does, but there is a smaller option for maybe a small bar dance. Or, you know, a smaller wedding. Maybe I don't need to bring out all 4. Maybe I don't need dual 12s. But man, to speculatively spend $7,500 and hope that I'm getting something that is substantially better than this, huge financial risk. And I just don't know if that's one I will ever be willing to take, because there's other things I need to buy. You know, and I've already got these, and they sound pretty good. Well, they sound really good. There's just a few downsides to it. You know, bigger events like that school dance, I probably would not go back to that school with these. I would bring dual 18 subs and stack my dual 15s, and you know, get some height on it, or even take just my dual 18s and put a 12 on a pole just to get it up really high. The other thing I'll say about this, where the FBT and the RCF have an advantage, is since the speaker's on a pole, you can rotate it. At the cross-country meet, while the cross-country meet was going on, I needed the speakers shooting a certain way. Well, at the end, for the awards ceremony, I didn't necessarily need to move the speakers, but I needed them to point differently. And with these, I actually tore up one of the corners because I was on a sidewalk, and if you have the column and everything put together and you're trying to rotate one of these speakers, you know, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, it's tough. So I ended up kind of picking it up and I rotated it on a corner, and I didn't notice it until later, but being I was on concrete, I chewed up that corner pretty good. Whereas if I would have had an Evox or a CS1000, I could have just taken the top speaker on the pole and just easily rotated it around. So, you know, and you're going to run into the same thing with the Electro Voice Evolve 50. You know, it looks good having that solid column. You know, I definitely will say these column arrays with just a unified column, no speak-on cord, no pole, they look better. But the functionality isn't quite there. You don't get the height adjustability, and you don't get the ability to rotate the top. You know, say you want it set up nicely and your speaker's tipped in a little bit because you've got a focused dance floor. Well, generally you've got such a wide dispersion you don't need to do that. But, you know, say you want to tip them in a little bit to minimize wall wash, or not have to have a front fill and really cover all the sound in the front and project all the way to the back. You know, sometimes you need to move your speakers to minimize reflections off of walls. With these, you have to cock the whole speaker in, and that's a little annoying. But you know, so that's my list of cons, and it might sound like I rambled on about the cons for some time there, and that the cons outweigh the pros. It might seem that way, but I really just wanted to make sure I was explaining each of the things on my con list. You know, the weight is manageable. The fact that it's not a line array is okay. It's not going to affect a lot of my events. You know, weddings are still going to be fine. The majority of school dances are still going to be fine. You know, anything where you're using a point source speaker, it's still going to be fine. Where the line array technology comes in and would be handy is in bigger conference rooms where, you know, you've got to throw, and you don't want it to be insanely loud in front just so the people in back can hear. You know, I wanted a column array so I didn't have to put a delay speaker halfway down the room on the sides and shoot them in. That's why I wanted to get this. And, you know, I don't have that ability with these. The feedback is a big issue. And, you know, I'm really going to, if I'm bringing this out to a speaking engagement or something where I know it's going to be really loud and I need an open microphone by the speakers, every time I'm going to second guess having these. The height problem, I don't think that's a huge issue. Just know you're not going to be able to do 300 to 500 kids at a school dance if everybody's clustered together. Now, if everybody is spaced out throughout the gym, you'd probably have no problems whatsoever. But if everybody likes to really pack it in right in front of the DJ, you're going to run into issues. You know, you're going to need to either space the speakers out 20 feet away from you on both sides, and hopefully that creates enough of a spread to get the whole gym. But, you know, that's definitely an issue. The rotating speaker thing, you know, not having a pole where you can move the speaker easily, it's not a huge issue either. But, you know, it's one of the things, it's one of the things that it'd be nice if it did. So, my final thoughts on this speaker. Should you buy it or should you not? I would say it's definitely a buy. You know, my con list might seem big, but you know, for the price, $3,000 for a pair, you're getting something that sounds great, has really good punchy bass. I mean, for just having the 12s, when you get two of these, you get really good punchy bass that you can feel in your chest. Now, if you're playing some hip hop with some really low, rumbly bass, or a rolling 808 drop or something, you know, the 12s can't handle the really low bass. It's going to trail off. But you're getting a really good sounding speaker and a really good looking speaker. It looks good, it sounds good, and you're getting a pair for $3,000. You could do probably 80% of the events you get booked for. We do some larger events where I was really wishing we could use these. You know, I don't think we're going to be able to use them for the really large events. I'll have to bring, you know, a standard point source system just to get the height I need for some and the volume I need. But it's a good speaker. You know, if you've got $8,000 to burn, you know, go out and buy the FBT. I don't know if it sounds better. I've never heard it. Like I said, I'd love to. You could buy the RCF Evox with the 15-inch sub and the column. You could try that out. But at the end of the day, I'd rather spend $3,000. I'd rather have this. I'm not going to throw it up for sale and get rid of it. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to use it. I just won't use it at the really large events. And if I do a speaking engagement, now I know, like, I'm going to have to not only use my IP3000s, but I'm probably going to have to use two IP500s, you know, halfway down the room, and make sure I bring, you know, an X32 so I can delay those ones properly. It's just something I'm going to have to deal with. You know, down the road, should I have $8,000 to speculate with, which I don't usually, because there's always a list of stuff I need to buy, I would maybe buy the CS1000s. Or, you know, if I ever buy a column array that is going to replace these, I am going to have some definite requirements. Like, the column has to be wood, probably going to have to be pole mounted or have at least some sort of extension capability to it. You know, even if it's 7.5 feet tall, it's just not enough of the speaker up above everybody. So, you know, I'm going to have probably a pole, and I would like scalability. Like, I did look at, so the DB technology is ES1203. I think that has the best specs of any of the column arrays out there, and it has the ability to have a pole, or there is an optional, like, column that you can put under the speaker top to give it that unified look. But the reason I would steer maybe more towards the FBT is the scalability factor, and the fact that if I don't need both 12s, you know, I can just bring out two single 12s and still have a nice looking setup. With the ES1203, it is a three-way, or, you know, it is a stereo, ability to do stereo top. So you could put the 12-inch sub off to the side and use a tripod on the other side. I don't like that look of one sub on one side. I like symmetry in my setups. and the 12-inch speaker, I've done the measurements because I thought about buying one of those, but it's too tall to put under a table. So anyways, I'll stop rambling on about other speakers that I have never used before and, quit speculating on what I might have bought instead of these, or what might be better but you're going to pay 3 times as much for. There's always something better that you could spend more money on. My point with these is $3,000 for the pair, great sounding speaker, does have some limitations, but that's because you're not buying the most expensive speaker on the market. With any product you get, there's always room for improvement. Maybe version 2, they'll fix a few of the things. Maybe Turbosound's watching my video right now. But anyways, if you have any questions about this speaker, do not hesitate to ask. Throw it down in the comments section. I'm usually pretty good about replying. If not the same day, within a couple of days. If you ask a question coming into a weekend, I'm probably not going to get back to you until Tuesday, because usually our weekends are pretty stacked. But if you have a question, throw it down in the comments section. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.